Tensions across the Middle East have surged dramatically after explosive claims emerged about one of the largest missile barrages in the ongoing confrontation between Iran and Israel. According to Iranian officials and multiple regional sources, Iran claims that it launched more than 200 missiles toward Tel Aviv in what is being described as a massive retaliatory strike following the reported death of Ali Larijani. The scale, intensity, and timing of the attack have immediately drawn global attention, raising concerns about a dangerous new phase in the conflict. According to Iranian claims, the barrage was not a limited or symbolic action. It was a large-scale operation designed to deliver a powerful message and create widespread impact. More than 200 missiles were reportedly launched in a coordinated sequence aimed at overwhelming defensive systems and striking multiple areas simultaneously. The sheer number of projectiles involved transformed the event from a conventional strike into a major escalation. Before we break down how this massive missile barrage unfolded, the destruction reported across Tel Aviv, and what this could mean for the future of the conflict, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest geopolitical developments shaping the world. According to sources monitoring the situation, the attack began with a sudden surge in launch detections across regional tracking systems. Radar networks identified multiple projectiles rising into the sky, quickly confirming that a large-scale barrage was underway. Within moments, early warning systems were activated across Israel, triggering alerts in Tel Aviv and surrounding areas. Sirens began to sound across the city, sending residents rushing toward shelters as authorities implemented emergency protocols. The speed and scale of the attack left little room for preparation. Reports indicate that the missiles were launched in rapid succession, creating a continuous flow of incoming threats. This was not a single wave, but a sustained barrage, with multiple phases designed to maintain pressure and increase the likelihood of impacts. As the projectiles approached Israeli airspace, defensive systems were activated and interceptors were launched in an attempt to neutralize the incoming missiles. Observers reported bright flashes across the sky as interception attempts took place, followed by loud detonations as defensive systems engaged incoming threats. However, according to multiple sources, the volume of missiles created an extremely challenging environment for interception systems. While many projectiles were targeted by defensive measures, the sheer number meant that not all could be intercepted. As a result, several missiles continued toward their targets. The first impacts were reported shortly after the initial interception attempts. Witnesses described powerful explosions that shook buildings and sent shockwaves through nearby areas. Windows shattered, alarms were triggered, and the sound of detonations echoed across the city. In some locations, flames were seen rising from impacted structures, indicating fires had broken out following the strikes. As the barrage continued, multiple areas across Tel Aviv were affected. The distribution of impacts created a complex situation, with no single location bearing the full force of the attack. Instead, different parts of the city experienced damage almost simultaneously. This made response efforts significantly more challenging, as emergency services were required to address multiple incidents at once. Firefighters, medical teams, and security personnel were deployed rapidly across the city. According to sources, emergency crews moved toward affected areas to contain fires, assist those impacted, and secure damaged locations. The presence of debris, damaged infrastructure, and ongoing alerts added to the difficulty of these operations, as responders had to remain prepared for the possibility of additional incoming threats. The psychological impact of the attack was immediate and intense. Residents who had taken shelter remained inside as sirens continued to sound intermittently. The uncertainty surrounding the duration of the barrage and the possibility of further waves created a heightened sense of tension. Each explosion reinforced the feeling that the situation was still unfolding. According to Iranian officials, the strike was carried out as a direct response to the reported killing of Ali Larijani. Iranian statements described the barrage as a demonstration of capability and a warning regarding the consequences of targeting senior figures within their leadership structure. The number of missiles launched was emphasized as evidence of the scale and seriousness of the response. On the ground, however, the focus remained on the immediate consequences. Reports indicate that several buildings sustained structural damage, with some areas experiencing more severe impacts than others. Glass facades were shattered, sections of buildings were damaged, and debris was scattered across streets. Vehicles in affected areas also showed signs of damage from shockwaves and falling fragments. In certain locations, fires continued to burn for some time after the impacts, requiring sustained efforts from emergency crews. The dense urban environment of Tel Aviv meant that even localized damage could have wider implications as nearby structures and infrastructure were at risk. This added urgency to response efforts as teams worked to prevent further damage and stabilize affected areas. The scale of the barrage also created logistical challenges. With multiple impact sites across the city, emergency services had to prioritize their responses based on severity and accessibility. Coordination between different units became essential as resources were distributed across multiple locations to address the most critical situations. At the same time, authorities maintained a high level of alert, indicating that the possibility of additional strikes had not been ruled out. This prolonged the period of uncertainty, keeping residents in shelters and maintaining a heightened level of tension across the city. Even after the initial wave of impacts, the situation remained fluid, with new information continuing to emerge. From a broader perspective, the attack represents a significant escalation in the confrontation between Iran and Israel. Large-scale missile barrages targeting major cities are among the most serious forms of military action, combining both physical destruction and psychological impact. According to analysts, the use of such a large number of missiles suggests an intention to overwhelm defenses and create widespread disruption, rather than targeting a single specific objective. The connection to the reported death of Ali Larijani adds another layer to the situation. Iranian officials have framed the attack as a direct response, linking the two events and presenting the barrage as retaliation. This framing could influence how the situation develops as both sides assess their next steps. For Israel, the attack raises immediate questions about defense readiness, response strategies, and the potential for further escalation. For Iran, the barrage represents a demonstration of capability and intent. For the region as a whole, it marks another step in a conflict that continues to intensify. As more details emerge, the full extent of the damage and the broader implications of the attack will become clearer. Assessments of impact sites, structural damage, and response effectiveness will provide a more detailed understanding of what occurred. However, even at this stage, the scale of the event is already evident. The barrage has changed the dynamics of the conflict. It has introduced a new level of intensity and raised the stakes significantly. It has also demonstrated how quickly situations can escalate when both sides engage in large-scale actions. In conflicts like this, each development has the potential to trigger further responses. Each action can lead to a reaction, creating a cycle that is difficult to control. The events that have unfolded in Tel Aviv illustrate how quickly such cycles can intensify. For residents, the experience is immediate and deeply personal. For analysts and observers, the focus is on the broader implications. For governments, the challenge is to respond while managing the risk of further escalation. At this moment, the situation remains tense. Authorities remain on high alert, and the possibility of additional developments cannot be ruled out. The world is watching closely, aware that what has happened could influence what comes next. Because in situations like this, the question is not just what has happened, but what will happen next. The answer to that question will shape the direction of the conflict and determine whether the situation stabilizes or continues to escalate. And as both sides assess the consequences of this massive missile barrage, one thing is clear. The events that have just unfolded have already changed the landscape. They have raised the stakes. They have intensified the confrontation. And they have created a moment that could define the next phase of this conflict. What happens next remains uncertain, but the impact of what has already happened is undeniable. And as the world continues to watch, waiting for clarity and response, the tension remains high. Because in conflicts like this, moments like these are rarely the end of the story. They are often just the beginning of what comes next. And as the situation continues to evolve, attention is now shifting toward the immediate aftermath of the barrage and the broader consequences it may trigger. In events of this scale, what follows the initial strike is often just as critical as the strike itself. Emergency assessments begin to reveal the extent of structural damage, infrastructure disruption, and the overall impact on daily life within the city. Authorities move quickly to evaluate affected areas, restore essential services where possible, and maintain order as residents begin to emerge from shelters. According to sources, one of the key challenges following such a large-scale attack is managing the ripple effects. Damage to buildings is only one part of the picture. Roads may be blocked by debris. Communication systems may be disrupted, and power supply in certain areas may be affected. Each of these factors adds complexity to the recovery process, requiring coordinated efforts across multiple agencies. The focus shifts from immediate response to stabilization, ensuring that the situation does not worsen further. At the same time, the psychological impact of the attack continues to be felt. Even after the explosions have stopped and the immediate danger appears to pass, the uncertainty remains. Residents remain cautious, aware that the possibility of additional strikes cannot be ruled out. The memory of sirens, the sound of impacts, and the experience of taking shelter linger, creating a lasting sense of tension. From a strategic perspective, analysts are closely examining what this level of escalation means. A barrage of this magnitude suggests not only capability, but also intent. It indicates a willingness to engage at a higher level of intensity, potentially opening the door to further actions. This raises concerns about how the situation may develop in the coming hours and days. According to observers, the response to such an event is a critical factor in determining what happens next. Decisions made in the aftermath, whether to escalate, de-escalate, or maintain the current level of engagement, can influence the trajectory of the conflict. Each option carries its own risks and potential consequences. Meanwhile, regional and global attention remains focused on the situation. Governments, analysts, and international organizations are monitoring developments closely, aware that events of this scale can have far-reaching implications. The possibility of broader instability, shifts in strategic positioning, and changes in regional dynamics are all part of the larger picture being considered. For now, the immediate priority remains on assessing the impact, ensuring safety, and maintaining readiness for any further developments. But beneath that surface, a larger question continues to grow. What does this escalation mean for the future? Because in conflicts like this, moments of intense action often serve as turning points. They redefine expectations, alter strategies, and set the stage for what comes next. And as both sides evaluate their positions, the world waits to see how this moment will shape the path forward. What is certain is that the events that have just unfolded will not fade quickly. Their impact will continue to influence decisions, perceptions, and actions in the days ahead.